This is David Galbenski, a co-founder of the Global School of Entrepreneurship and also the Living Liver Foundation. The episode today on the Business Growth Architect Show, I'm going to discuss a few concepts that have been critical to my leadership style and my journey both through a health scare and my journey as an entrepreneur. I'll be talking about concepts such as realistic positivity, transformational influence, and how it may be different from what we see in social media today that's about transactional influence. I'll be talking about the Living Liver Foundation and how I'm paying my gift of life forward after being a living liver transplant recipient. And I think a really cool entrepreneurial MBA program from the Global School of Entrepreneurship that is by entrepreneurs, for entrepreneurs, with entrepreneurs. So I hope you'll enjoy the podcast today. And I hope you get one nugget that'll allow you to maximize your impact on the world in a spot that is critical to you and an area of expertise that you'd love to see your legacy live on.
Welcome to the Business Growth Architect Show. I am Beate Chelette. I am the host. I want to welcome you to our globally top 10% ranked podcast, where you will hear from industry experts about the strategies that are working right now to unlock hidden opportunities in any market so that you can grow your authority and scale your impact. And now let's get started with the show. Welcome back. This is your host, Beate Chelette. Today, we are turning things a little bit upside down because we are talking to Dave Galbenski, who has a lot to share about, and I want to say about a fatal diagnosis that he had to figure out how to overcome and how he turned something from something and something else, and now is on a mission to help entrepreneurs just like you. So, Dave, I'm excited to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, hey, thanks so much for having me. It's awesome just to have these types of dialogues and just share experiences and stories with each other, right? Because I think that's how entrepreneurs learn. We learn from each other and sharing experiences. So delighted to be here.
100%. So I want to just start with this. I think in a lot of people's books, you shouldn't even be here given the diagnosis that you have received. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what happened to you and how did you manage to overcome that?
Sure. So for me, it occurred when I was in my early 40s. I was married and had a daughter and started to experience some unique blood test work that revealed some issues with my liver. And as with anything, we had to probe a little bit to see what the cause of it was. And after a couple years of trying to figure out what was causing the issue with the liver, I was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease. And it's a mouthful. It's called primary sclerosing cholangitis, otherwise known as PSC. And because only about 30,000 people in the United States have it, there's not a whole lot of treatments. But there is one treatment, and that is when you enter end-stage liver disease from it, you can have a liver transplant if you're lucky enough to either get an organ from a deceased donor or even a living donor. So that began my journey in my early 40s, and it was about a decade-long journey through the process to our conversation today. And so lots of lessons learned, running a company, leading a family, involved in the community, and managing, if you will, a diagnosis that, didn't have any cure and could have ended up in me not being here today with you.
So one of the things that strikes me about you, and that's the first thing when we first met and talked about this podcast, is that there is such an unbelievable positivity that exudes you. I have an aunt who has been living with diabetes for her entire life. I will tell you, my conversations with her are not these conversations. She's angry. She can't believe this happened to her. She's fighting every single day. What is it that you did where you took something that was so threatening to your life, to your family, and as a father, I cannot even fathom the thought of not being there for your girls, walking them down the aisle. I mean, I'm sure there's 1,000 things that go through your head. So what was it? What was your process to not fall into that, why me?
Yeah, I think first on a macro strategic level, it was one choice. Do I live with abundance or scarcity? Was the first choice. When I had that diagnosis, I said, you know what? I'm going to live life with abundance, not scarcity. And I'm going to treasure every moment. Every moment could be one of those special moments. I always like to call them, either moments with a lowercase m or moments with the capitalized M, right? And for me, when I realized I had a life-threatening disease, I said, I'm going to make every moment that maybe was viewed as a lowercase m moment and really make it an uppercase moment because those moments are so special. So it started with that, live with abundance, not scarcity. And then I came up with this concept over time that I realized, and I coined it, realistic positivity. And it sprung from a book that a lot of entrepreneurs probably have read that are listening, the Jim Collins Good to Great. And Jim Collins tells the story of Admiral Stockdale about how he survived being a prisoner of war. And as I pieced together his different conclusions, what I realized for me is I was going to confront the brutal facts of my diagnosis, but I was never going to lose faith that the outcome of that, if I were to be alive, was going to be the defining moment of my life. And I had faith that I was going to get that to that moment. And so I just started to say, I'm going to live with realistic positivity. A lot of brutal facts to confront, but I'm going to go at it with optimism and I'm not going to lose faith. And if I'm lucky enough to get through this, it's going to be a defining moment for the positive, not the negative.
It sounds to me like there is a lot of reframing because we can either look at the glasses of water as half full or half empty, depending on how you look at it. But to say realistic positivity when you have what very easily could be a fatal diagnosis, I'm sure that some of our listeners are going to go, dude, you just got to get real here. But you did get real. Where's the reality here? The reality is your reality the outcome that you want to have? And that's your belief? Or is the reality on the statistics, the data, survival chances, or those are the brutal facts? Help me reconcile this, because this is, I think, the thing about you that I find so fascinating and want the audience to really understand how you do this.
Yeah. So for me, I always love to understand those statistics. What are the survival rates? What are my options? What can I do? And really control what I can control, right? Which is understanding it to the best level that I can, but also understanding that whatever the outcome is, the moments along the way, the steps I'm taking, if I'm in that present moment, I'm still making a positive impact. And I know what the outcome I wanted to be was I was going to get a liver transplant and I was going to go on in life and live to a greater purpose. But I also realized on that journey towards end-stage liver disease is I could create special moments. I could create impact if I just continue to live life with abundance. Not saying, hey, I know I'm going to live for sure. It's out there and I'm going to make all these great plans that of course I'm going to be alive, but literally saying I'm going to be open every day for the possibilities that come into my life. And I'm going to continue to pursue them in a way that makes sense based upon the situation I'm facing. Of course, we did all of the plannings for the negative outcomes, right? To make sure I had all my estate documents in place, all of those things, so that if it didn't turn out the way we needed, we were prepared, but we were equally prepared for a successful outcome to thrust us into the next chapter of our lives.
I'm almost hearing like a surrender experiment philosophy in there, which I'm actually reading right now or listening to it. So you can either fight or live in accordance to the path. How did you surrender?
Yeah, so for me, I've always been a faith-filled individual, believe in a higher power. So I gave the situation up. I prayed on it a lot, and I said, whatever is your will, let me move forward in the best spirit possible to create that outcome. And if my outcome was that this was going to be a disease that took my life on that timeline, I was going to accept that. But I was going to live each day until that moment with abandon, with joy, with the ability to hopefully make an impact on others because of how I was going down that journey, right? Because I think we have those choices every day on how we choose to show up, particularly as leaders in our own companies, right? We know that when we arrive, our employees are looking at us, all of our actions, our moods, our leadership style. And to me, this was the greatest test of who I was as a human being, who I was as a leader for myself, for my family, in my company, to say, I'm going to show up the best version of myself because this is my defining moment. This is how I have to lead. And if I lead in a scenario that is incredibly stressful with an uncertain outcome, and I can lead myself and others, there's no greater test of leadership than that. And so I think every entrepreneur that's listening should be thinking, how do I arrive every day to my office? Because when I arrive, everyone's looking to us as the leaders to set the tone. And so to me, I have to come in with that, whether it's positivity, realistic positivity, but they're going to feed off of our energy. When we walk into that office or into the Zoom meeting, if we're all working remotely, they're going to feed off of that energy. And that's how we lead. And I chose to lead with that realistic positivity concept.
Now, I like the bridge that you built for me to move now over to entrepreneurship. And how does your idea of transformational influence now fit into this? How do you create this? What is transformational influence and how did you even come up with it?
I started thinking a lot about what my second half of life is, or my second opportunity at life is. And you really look at it and you say, today, to your point, it's mostly transactional influence that is fleeting. That is, if I put this forward, I'm going to extract this. And it's kind of that one-to-one, whether we look at social media, you build millions of followers, you extract from it, but I don't see it being enduring. And I don't see it making that lasting impact that influencers in the social media world want to. So I started pondering, well, instead of transactional influence, what does transformational influence look like? And to me, when I look at it, I go, it's about intentionally creating relationships that are built upon trust and authenticity without knowing how you're going to benefit each other today and in the future. But you just respect each other and you both come there with authenticity and you build that trust. It's then in that moment that our life's trajectory over time will create opportunities that we go, this is the moment that all those relationships that I've built up over time can allow us collectively to make a positive impact on the world. And so for me, when I think about the autoimmune disease that I had, it thrust my purpose, if I were to survive that by getting a liver transplant, to say, where do I want my impact to be? And one of the things I chose was to build awareness around living organ donation. There's two organs that can be transplanted while someone's alive, a kidney and a liver. The liver regrows. It's the most amazing
I've never heard
organ.
of this until I spoke to you. Yeah. That to me, I always thought that a transplant was when you're dead, they can have it, but that seems to be not the case.
No, for both a kidney and a liver, you can give it when you're alive and save someone's life. So when that happened to me, I said, wow, this is an opportunity for me in all the relationships that I've created over time that are based upon trust and authenticity, is to rally that forward for a collective greater good, which is making people aware that they can become living donors and save someone's lives. And transformational influence to me is not about what you talked about, transactional. Hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. It's about how do I use my life's experience to honor others to make the impact that we want. And for me, I honor my brother-in-law, Mark, every day. He was the individual that saved my life by giving me a portion of his liver. And when I honor him, I honor every other living donor out there by building the message. Transformational influence is creating relationships based upon authenticity, which builds trust without a defined outcome that you want, but recognizing at some point there can be that 10x, 100x opportunity to make an impact on the world. And then we're using our own platform to honor and amplify others. And that's ultimately, I think, that virtuous cycle of transformational influence that's out there. And that excites me for those that may today be involved in transactional influence. They may have hundreds of thousands, millions of followers. And if they can follow that formula of authenticity, building trust, waiting for the right moment to make an impact and amplify others, that gives me goosebumps thinking about what this next generation can do using the good that we have in this digital connected environment to move from transactional to transformational. It's pretty powerful. And I'm hopeful that we can amplify that type of thinking and continue to refine that concept collectively. Because if we can harness it for those social media influencers today that are about transactions to transformation, there isn't a problem we can't solve out there.
This is really a shift in thinking where it goes away from quantity to quality and where it goes to connection versus persuasion, really. But it's a longer game.
It is. I love how you just parse concepts and dig in because you're absolutely right. It is a longer game, but to me, there's new books out there, right? That, hey, 10x is a lot easier than 2x. It's Dan Sullivan's great, latest book on that thinking, right? And I go, wow, that's what this is talking about. It sometimes is very hard for transactional influence. You're constantly having to put in, feed the engine,
the machine,
extract from it. Right. Where when we think about transformational influence, you go, wow, 10x could be a lot easier than 2x. And then the impact on the world is so much better. So those are the things that I hope people start to ponder a little bit more and go, maybe that's a little bit better way to build a network.
All right. And we will be right back and we'll talk about the entrepreneurial MBA program that you're working on. We'll be right back. Are you looking for the hidden opportunities for you in this market? Or are you simply wanting to figure out what is your unique differentiation factor that makes clients want to work with you and not your competitors? If this resonates, I want to invite you to go to uncoverysession.com and schedule your 15-minute complimentary uncovery session with one of our business growth advisors that will take you through what your number one business growth blocker is, what you can do to remove it, and what your very best next step should be. And now let's get back to the show. So Dave, I think we already had quite a few of these truth bombs, if you so want to, that we've been given to our audience. But I want to now talk about something that you are super passionate about. So when we connected, you said to me that you're doing an entrepreneurial MBA, like a real entrepreneurial MBA. And tell our audience, what is it?
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's by entrepreneurs, for entrepreneurs, with entrepreneurs. How can it get any better than that, right? It's called the Global School of Entrepreneurship at gse.mba. And what's cool about it is it's an accredited MBA program that can be done digitally. And right now we have a program that we really love, and it's 8 to 12 individuals in a cohort that are able to work through a curriculum over 18 months with a professor going through 13 classes that are your traditional MBA programs, and then following it up with a capstone project. So during those 18 months, you're hanging out with 10 other entrepreneurs in a cohort model, doing it digitally from wherever you are at in the world, running your company. You're earning an MBA, and every topic that comes to you through that curriculum, you're able to apply it right to your business, including your capstone, which is kind of your final summation to say, I understand everything in these 13 classes I've got. I'm going to demonstrate that, and I'm going to do it tied to my business. So what we wanted to do was make it easy for our entrepreneurs to connect to it, to get the credentials and the latest thinking, but most importantly, build their entrepreneurial network and apply it right back to their business. It's kind of that secret sauce, and we call it the mastermind to MBA. So they're with a mastermind group, 18 months, done digitally, all the curriculum, and at the end, they get a accredited MBA, just like they'd get if they went to any of the other name brand MBA programs out there that are either in person or digital in nature.
What made you do this? Because the only schools for entrepreneurships we see are digital marketers, but that's not about entrepreneurship per se. And then I have the entrepreneur education where I can study entrepreneurship with people who've never been entrepreneurs in their entire lives, which is obviously my very favorite thing in the world. How inauthentic is that? So, where was this inflection point? Where was the pain that you saw that you wanted to solve? And why did you even want to solve it?
Well, here's what I believe, right? I believe entrepreneurs can help each other scale quicker if they're together to create more jobs, to build more wealth that they can contribute out to solve the world's greatest problems. So for me, it was like, let's make that trajectory like this, because I know it's going to impact their companies, their communities, et cetera. So we said, let's deliver it how they want it, which is with other entrepreneurs, and let's deliver it in a way that they can easily consume it. And why we wanted to make sure it was accredited is we oftentimes hear our entrepreneurs go, wow, I deal with people with all of these credentials, all of these commas after their name. And boy, I don't have that. I want to make sure that I feel accomplished, that not only have I demonstrated I can do it on a daily basis in running a successful business, but I can do it academically and have that stamp, if you will, that says, I know all of these. And a lot of them want to go back and teach in traditional academia. So we're like, well, if that's a route for them to bring entrepreneurship in, they get an MBA, it's an advanced degree. They can go back into traditional academia and share their story. So it's kind of a twofer, right? We can give them the type of academic experience that they want, and yet we can go into traditional academia. They, as operating entrepreneurs, have the credential that allows them to walk into the classroom and teach an entrepreneur course to aspiring entrepreneurs. I go, wow, that's exactly how we want to bring entrepreneurship to students that are studying in traditional academia. Experienced practitioners that understand the business principles academically and then have that credential to go in and reshape the experience for those going to traditional universities. So that was kind of the inspiration. If we do that well with our Mastermind to MBA, imagine what we can do all across the globe. No matter what country, we can start to drive down the cost and access. So again, we can help entrepreneurs scale anywhere that they are with the skills that they need with other entrepreneurs, again, to make a difference in their community, because we know entrepreneurs, they build communities.
There's so much in there. I have to organize my thoughts here, because there, on the one side, I will say that there is something to be said, especially for all of us that are suffering from imposter syndrome. I mean, we know the famous story of Muhammad Ali, how he became the greatest boxer of all times because he just said he was the greatest boxer of all times. And then he went in everybody's face and forced it down their throat. But a lot of people can't really do that because that's not their personality type. They might be introverts. They might not have that personal conviction. So to say that there is something out there that where I can build my own credibility.
Yes, absolutely. And you hit on it, right? The imposter syndrome is real for entrepreneurs. There's not a group that I go and speak in front of or talk to when we're being authentic that goes, oh man, when I walk into that room, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here. Am I really the leader of this company and I'm with others? So to have that ability to get a credential that says, yes, indeed, I know my business. Someone else has said it and I've got it in a way that makes sense. Oh, it is powerful, because I believe if we can unlock our mind, no different than realistic positivity, abundance versus scarcity. If we can put that imposter syndrome on the shelf, imagine the power of the entrepreneur that releases. And so we believe not only are we giving them the intellectual credentials, we're giving them the emotional connection to themselves that says, I am worthy of running this amazing business. I am worthy to be in this room. I have demonstrated that I'm worthy to have an MBA because I got it the way that I knew I could get it, as opposed to, oh, I don't know if I could go to traditional academia. Maybe I can't go to those weekend executive programs, but we're packaging it together. That to me, again, unleashes that potential of the entrepreneur that just radiates out. And that's why I do it, is that's what I want, because it can be the impact out into the community.
In some extent, I think it's healthy for an entrepreneur to know what we are good at and what we're not good at. And then to say, let me be surrounded by some of the best people to help me understand the whole picture. And then if there's 12 things and I am good at 6, then there's still 6 more things for me to learn. And on 6, I can contribute. And then I'll have this MBA and then I have an outward sign. It's almost like I have to reach to the outside to make my inside feel better.
That's so brilliant. Well said. I wish I could have said it that succinctly. You unpacked exactly what we're trying to do. I love it. And if you don't mind, I may use that in the future.
Go ahead. I mean, well, that is my super skill, is to take these things and then drill them down into one thing. But I have like this visual when you said what you said. So just so the audience gets a little behind the curtain view of how I operate and how I even do these interviews. Like I literally, when you were saying that, I saw this like a candle on the inside. And then I saw, this hand like reaching in and just lighting that candle. That was the visual that I had.
It's a superpower you have. I love how you're able just to dial in right to the core issue. It truly is amazing.
Are there any rewards for doing this by ourselves? Let's just debunk that myth, because I think that's another one that we are up against, is that people a lot of times feel that it only has value if they are killing themselves figuring it out on their own. What do you say to that? If somebody says, I got to figure this out on my own, I can't spend the money, entrepreneurship is all about hard knocks. What do you say to somebody like that?
Well, I think there's a proverb, and I will not say it exactly right, but if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together with someone, right? So when I look at it, it goes back to our transformational influence versus transactional influence. I'm a big believer in, if we want to have lasting impact, it's about going at it together, and that we as a collective can get farther and make greater impact than literally saying, I have to go at it alone. That's how I view it. So for me, it's the more we can do things together, share a common vision, we make a greater impact out into the world.
Yeah, I will agree with you. And I think this is a great message to finish the podcast on. But what I have found in my life in entrepreneurship, and this is actually something I'm still learning, to be honest with you, Dave. I don't need anybody. I can do this by myself. But the deeper I get into this part of my life, I recognize that alone gets you alone. And unless that's what you want, that's really not a good place, because nobody will like you. Nobody wants to be there with you. Nobody will cover your back. Nobody stands up for you. People then will say, well, I got a better offer. Give me just one more thing. How did you when you inside? I think this is your story with the vulnerability, though, why I like it so much. How did you allow this vulnerability to show and yet draw so much strength?
Yeah, I think the more vulnerable we get, the stronger we get, because vulnerability requires authenticity. Authenticity is where you get stronger because you're more connected with who you are. But boy, we try to stay away from vulnerability. Our ego does. Like, no, I can't go there. I can't go there. I can't go there, because it wants to be in control. But the more I sink into vulnerability and authenticity, the stronger I get. And what I have found in life is the more vulnerable I get, the more authentic and vulnerable other people get. And I love that connection, because I think we're growing together. We're becoming better versions of ourselves and making things happen in that way. And reverting back to your other point about thinking about going at it alone and where things are at, what I've learned as well is what got us to a certain point won't get us to the next stage. And entrepreneurship goes through stages, as we know. So maybe there is a phase that we as entrepreneurs go at it alone, and it's the right way to go at it for that moment, right? In that moment in time, we got to go at it. We got to work hard. It's got to be us. We're going. But then at a certain point, that will not be the effective way to lead and run an entrepreneurial enterprise. So then we need to move on to that next phase. And I always have this, always asking myself, is what I'm doing today that got me here the right thing to take me forward? And I always ask that question. What got me here? Is that the right thing going forward? And I always come to the conclusion when it's a big enough shift that the answer is usually no. I need to change how I'm going about it if I'm changing what the goal is and the complexity and the impact. So I would challenge our entrepreneurs that are listening to go, am I at a phase that I go, the habits and things that I've been focused on and thought processes that got me here, are those the right ones that are going to carry me forward? 9 times out of 10, I found when entrepreneurs ask that question, they go, no, I'm not going to work that way. I have to change in this way to achieve the next phase. And then we keep growing and iterating along the way.
Amazing. So, Dave, for somebody who wants to know more about you, the program, or please do give also a shout out to your Liver Foundation. I want to make sure we mention that. Where would they go?
Yeah, so for the Living Liver Foundation, it's livingliver.org. And to learn more about the Global School of Entrepreneurship, gse.mba. Great spots to go check things out. And I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. Not as active on X at this stage, but go check things out.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure to connect with and talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Grateful to be on the show.
Thank you so much. And that is it for us for today. Thank you so much for watching or listening. And I see you again next time. And goodbye. Thank you for listening to or watching the show. We are so excited that you're here and we are very grateful for you. Now it's our turn to ask you for help. Please do share this episode with one other person that needs to hear what we were talking about today. If there's any question you have about business, please do reach out to us and let us know. And don't forget to schedule your complimentary Uncovery session at uncoverysession.com, where one of our business growth advisors will help you to figure out what your number one business growth blocker is in only 15 minutes. And that's it for us today. Until next time.